Okay, it's Sunday afternoon. We've both been working hard in the garden. Jenny's been pruning, I've been chopping firewood. We're just going to sit down now, Sunday afternoon, and do a jigsaw puzzle. That's not the topic of this video. These are chocolate chip cookies I brought back from Spain, and they are 40% chocolate chips, or pepitas chocolate. Pepitas, chocolate pips in Spanish. So anyway, 40% chocolate chips. We're going to have a try of these now, and then the rest of the video is going to be something else. Do help yourself. So there we go. That's what 40% chocolate chips looks like. Supposedly. I have no way of measuring that, but it doesn't actually look like 40%, but maybe it is. Nice cup of tea. Very good. Spanish know how to do chocolate flavoured things. Anyway, that 40% is the topic of the video. So here's the plan. We're going to try to discover what is the maximum, or perhaps what is the optimum percentage of chocolate chips in chocolate chip cookies. I've got a recipe which I've based on Jamie Oliver's chocolate chip cookie recipe. So we've got 100 grams of butter. He used unsalted butter and salt. I've just used salted butter because that's about the right amount of salt for me. 125 grams of soft brown sugar. I'm using unrefined cane sugar. So this is not brown because it's had molasses added back. This is brown because it hasn't had the molasses completely taken out. Just makes the flavour a little bit richer and more complex. 1 large egg, half a teaspoon of vanilla, 200 grams of self-raising flour. And normally we would have 100 grams of chocolate chips mixed into the dough. But I'm going to mix these in little batches so that we can control the percentage. And this is my table of percentages. So we're going to try 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 and 90% chocolate chips. I think we're going to have trouble with the 90%. I think we're going to have trouble with them sticking together. And we may end up making biscuit chip chocolate or something worse. Anyway, that's the plan. We're going to make the dough first, which is this process. I've done it this way because I don't normally follow recipes in the kitchen, so I've made myself a little visual chart. So we're going to start with 100 grams of salted butter. This is probably not quite warm enough because it's cold in the kitchen today, so I'm just going to give that a tiny little blip in the microwave. That was like 10 seconds just to make it soft. And that gets combined with 125 grams of soft brown sugar. Could use my electric beater for this, but I'm going to try to do this manually. So this is the old-fashioned sort of method for making cakes and cookies, where you combine the sugar and butter first, and then you add the egg, and then you add the dry ingredients. And the reason they did it that way is they didn't have electric mixers, so you had to have a way of controlling the consistency of the mix while you're putting it all together. You could just dump all these things in and mix them with an electric mixer and it would be pretty much the same. 1 large egg, which I'll crack separately into a glass just to make sure it's okay, and also just to give us the opportunity to pick out any bits of shell. And again, just going to mix that together until we got a fairly uniform mix. The other benefit of doing it this way is that once the flour goes in, the more you mix it, the tougher the gluten will become. So adding the flour last does potentially control that and give you a more crumbly cookie or a lighter, less bready cake. In practice, it probably doesn't make a lot of difference in a recipe that's going to be mixed quite briefly. Anyway, that's looking good. Now, half a teaspoonful of vanilla extract. And now the flour, not all at once. So about probably just less than half the flour. I'm just going to fold that in. It doesn't matter too much, we're just trying to make it manageable. The recipe says fold, mixing is going to be fine. Okay, so that's all of that 200 grams of flour, and I'm just going to mix now until that's a uniform dough. Not difficult. Well, I mean, a little bit strenuous on the arms, so you know, if you need to use a mechanical mixing aid, I mean, this video is not intended to be a recipe that you would want to follow. This is really about scratching a curious itch. It's a bit down the bottom now. I want to just make sure it's mixed in. Okay, there we go. So at this point, we would normally add some chocolate chips and mix it again, and then divide it out into portions and bake it. But I want to make a variety of different percentages of chocolate chips. I've got a little table showing me the amount of dough I need to use to make 2 cookies and the amount of chocolate chips. So let us proceed with that. So to make 2 30-gram 40% chocolate chip cookies, we will require 36 grams of dough, how about that? Nailed it first time. And 24 grams of chocolate chips. Now these are proper chocolate chips, all cocoa mass and cocoa butter, no palm oil or other nonsense. And I've got a mixture of milk and dark. 24 grams of chocolate chips. There we go. That already looks like quite a lot of chocolate chips. So now I need to contrive to mix that together. Well, that's supposed to make 2 cookies, but they're going to be very small. I think we might just make 1 big one. Okay, so that's 40% by weight chocolate chips. Now I don't know. I imagine those ones from Spain must have been by weight. Moistened fingers. And then, yeah, that's not 2 cookies worth of dough, is it? And I've got a baking tray prepared. And I've written on the bit, I'm not going to bake it on top of that bit of parchment, but that's my 40% cookie. There's still a little bit of dough there on the bowl. We're just going to ignore that. So 50%, I will need 30 grams of dough. What's the chances of getting this spot on first time? 25. 31. 30 grams of dough and 30 grams of chocolate chips. Obviously 50%. There we go. And so on. I think I'll turn the camera off until we get to maybe 70 or 80%, and you can see how tricky this is becoming. Okay, this is where we're at the moment. 40%, 50%, 60%. 60% was barely cohesive. I think 70 is going to be interesting. I don't think it's going to have enough dough to hold together, but we'll crack on. Okay, we're on 80% now, and that requires 12 grams of dough. And then the rest is chocolate chips, up to 60 grams. I don't think this is going to hold together. So that's 80% chocolate chips, and I just can't see how we're going to get this to hold together. Some people watching this might be wondering why I'm calling these cookies. But cookies is an English word. It is a word in the English lexicon. I think we acquired it from Dutch, from cookies, which is, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that means little cakes. And I think it's been in the English language for hundreds of years, but most of the uniform looking baked crispy goods are called biscuits here. Cookies is still a word that's reserved for this kind of thing, for something that's slightly more uneven, perhaps with mixed ingredients or inclusions that, you know, like chocolate chips or raisins or whatever. Okay, I don't know that that's going to stay together, but let's have a go. That is 80%, and it's falling apart, but I'm going to get it on the tray and we'll have a look. Okay, 70 and then 80. Well, we might as well go for 90 now. It's interesting, this is not how I visualised it would be. Right, so 90% is 6 grams. Not even that much. 6 grams of dough and 54 grams of chocolate chips. Just a pile of chocolate, really. Perhaps the silicone spatula might be better. I don't think there's even enough dough here that every chocolate chip is going to get even a touch on it. Bearing in mind this is by weight as well, so the chocolate chips are less dense than the dough, so it might look like that's more than 90% chocolate, but it probably is by volume. But by weight, it's, well, you saw me measure it. Okay, well, that can't possibly be a cookie. I'm going to get the tray over here. I think for this one, I'm going to put it in there. Otherwise it's just impossible to put down. Yeah, there's just no cohesion there at all. I think that's just going to melt into a puddle of chocolate. Okay then, so 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% chocolate chips. I've got to put these somewhere to chill for half an hour and then preheat the oven and we'll bake them. Okay, oven is preheated to 170 Celsius. The cookie's going to go in. I'm going to put the ones with more chocolate on the bottom shelf because it shouldn't make very much difference, but they might get a little bit less heat. And we're going to bake those for 10 minutes. I'll keep an eye on them because I have a feeling the ones with more chocolate on the bottom shelf may well just turn into puddles of chocolate. That was the reason why I've used trays with a rim. I did actually give them an extra 2 minutes, so the 12 minutes in the recipe. It was 10 to 12, I've baked them for 12. Let's see what we've got. I mean, I think they probably are a little bit under still, but I think they're meant to be chewy. So 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. The remainder of the dough, I've mixed in the proportion of chocolate chips that was in the original recipe that I took, Jamie Oliver's chocolate chip cookie, which is about 20% chocolate chips. I'm going to bake those as well now. Interestingly, they do all look kind of cookie-like. Even the 90% chocolate is still, it didn't melt into a complete puddle. That's probably because chocolate chips are typically formulated so they don't melt completely, or not quite so easily as regular chocolate. Anyway, got to wait for those to cool now, so back in a moment. But while we're waiting for that, ponder this. Is it possible to make a 100% chocolate chip cookie and still have it look like a cookie? I think it is. We're going to have to do a little bit of cheating. But I think we can make something that looks like a chocolate chip cookie, but is made of 100% chocolate chips. Hold that thought. So that's the ones made according to Jamie's recipe, although I went a lot bigger with them. That recipe is supposed to make 20 cookies. I've made 11. They would have been very small cookies if we'd made them to the original recipe. So I baked these, because these are even larger than my test cookies, I've baked them a little bit longer. So they are quite golden on top. I don't think the camera's necessarily picking that up, but hopefully they'll still be chewy in the middle. Okay, Jenny has kindly agreed to join me for the tasting of these cookies. So we have got 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 and 90% chocolate chips. And then this one is what I thought was Jamie's recipe. It's got 20% in there. Jamie's recipe actually came out to 17%, but I put 20 in when I was making these. So I think we'll start with the 40% actually. So 40%, it's baked, it's a soft cookie. Let's cut it in half and have a look inside. So a little bit chewy still in the middle. Chocolate chips haven't melted or run away or anything. Because we've got a lot to eat here, I think we're probably, I mean, we're only going to want a taste of this, aren't we? So I think we'll do that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So then that's yours and that's mine. Okay, so this is 40% chocolate chips. What do you think? That already seems like quite a lot of chocolate chips, doesn't it? It's interesting. I wonder how they measured it for that packet we brought back from Spain, because that didn't look like so many as this. But that is already a lot of chocolate chips. So 50% has gone a little bit more brown on the bottom. Now this is interesting because, well, we'll see when we get round to 70%. Something weird happened. So 50%, conspicuously more chocolate chips inside, and it looks like it's baked a little bit firmer as well. So again, okay, so that's the 50%. quite indulgent. Still get the sense I'm eating a cookie.
Yeah.
But it does.
It's not an awful lot of difference.
Yeah, not that much perceptible difference, I would say.
No.
Okay. On to 60%. And this one's browned even more, which is interesting. So 60%. And now, obviously, we're seeing more chocolate than cookie in there. And it really has baked a bit drier. Hello, dog. You can't have any of this. It would make you dead. 60% then. What do you think?
You're beginning to taste a lot more chocolate than the cookie.
Yeah, absolutely. The chocolate is very much more of a dominant flavour in that one. And actually, I think the texture is starting to not be a cookie, isn't it? That, when I bit into it, I was eating a cookie. That, when I bit into it, it just broke apart into pieces of chocolate. Interesting. Okay, onward. So 40, 50, 60, 70%. Now, this is the really weird one, because this one did not bake as firm as the others. Something happened here that inhibited the dough from baking as completely in the same amount of time at the same temperature. And so, I mean, 70%, you can't really see very much cookie there. And yeah, the dough, when it came out, this one still looked kind of wet. So 70%. Oh, yeah, it doesn't even hold together anymore. I mean, it's nice because it's chocolate.
It's almost a bar of chocolate.
It is a bar of chocolate at this point, yes. It's chocolate held together with, loosely with cookie dough. Eva, you can't have it, Pop it. Eva has been placated with a gravy bone. She definitely can't have chocolate chip cookies. Chocolate is not good for dogs. Right, so this is now 80%. Now, this is interesting. So we went from a light bake through to a darker bake, then suddenly a lighter bake again, and then we've gone back to a darker bake. This is now actually looking quite toasted on the bottom. This is 80%. Quite difficult to cut, actually. So 80%, you really can't see much cookie in there. Not quite sure how we're going to cut small pieces of this, but there we go, there's yours. Okay. 80%. Now, I don't like that one so much.
No.
So despite that being more chocolate, and it is good chocolate, obviously 80% is more than 70%, duh, but it's a little bit burnt. The chocolate has, I presume there's something about the dough, there's some interaction here, some synergy happening between the dough and the chocolate. And that chocolate is a little bit dry and toasted and not as pleasant as that one, even though that one was underbaked on the cookie dough. Interesting. Okay, and then finally, well, not quite finally, because we're going to taste the 20% as well. So this is the 90%, and I pleasantly surprised to see it did actually stay as a cookie. It didn't melt into a puddle of chocolate, but it does look like it's burnt. I can't even cut it in half without it breaking. Okay. So 90%. Thoughts?
It tastes a bit bitter.
It's not nice, actually. No, it's not horrible. It's just nice.
Bar of dark chocolate.
But it's not like a nice bar of dark chocolate. I mean, this is a mix of dark and milk chocolate chips, and they are good chocolate chips, but that's not the best way to enjoy them. So we got one more to try, which is the 20%. So this is more like Jamie's recipe, although Jamie's was only 17%. I've made a bigger cookie out of this as well, so it's a bit softer. So we've got, that's what 20% looks like. It really is very strange, isn't it? The perception of percentages. But anyway, that's 20%. And I think it's a lot more cake-like inside. So 20%.
It's definitely more like a biscuit.
I don't think that's enough chocolate, though.
No.
I think that could do with some more. So I don't know. I think maybe the sweet spot is actually where we didn't go, which was 30%. So what's your favourite out of these ones on the plate, Jenny?
I think that first one.
The 40%? I think you're right. So it looks like that packet of 40% chocolate chip cookies might well be the sweet spot for the amount of chocolate in them. I think it might make a difference if the chocolate was pressed into the top of the cookie rather than mixed into the dough. So you might be able to make like a 20% chocolate chip cookie like this one, and then press another 10% of chocolate into the top of the dough, and you might end up with like a 30% chocolate chip cookie, but tasting more chocolatey. Well, that was an interesting experiment. And tomorrow I'm going to try to make 99% or 100% chocolate chip cookie. We will see how that goes. But yeah, thanks for joining me on that, Jenny. And yeah, that was the tasting. So yeah, I think I agree with Jenny. The 40% is the sweet spot here. Everything up to 50% was okay. 60% started to be like a chocolate bar. 80% is where it started being not nice. And 90% is just way less nice than anything else on the plate here, even though it's nearly all chocolate. How strange, eh? So I've got some chocolate chips left, and now the question is, can I make chocolate chip cookies using 100% chocolate chips? What does that even mean? Isn't that just going to be a bar of chocolate? Well, yes, but also no. I've got a cunning plan. These are white chocolate chips. Now at this point we probably lose the people who don't believe that white chocolate is chocolate, but these are white chocolate chips made from cocoa butter and milk solids, and what we're going to do with these is first caramelise them. So that's enough. Those are going to go in the oven at 120 Celsius, and I'm going to check them every 10-15 minutes and give them a little stir. And the idea here is firstly that this will caramelise, it will toast, it'll go a brown colour, it will acquire some flavours that might be associated with baked goods, some toastiness. That's part one. Okay, I'm going to check back on that in 12 minutes. Alright, so that's after the first 12 minutes. And it doesn't look like it's changed very much at all, except I can see a little bit of slight browning on the outside ones. So I'm just gonna, this is not easy, just gonna move those around. It's interesting, they haven't melted. I probably would have been better off with a bar of chocolate here. Like I say, these are intended for baking, and so they're formulated not to actually melt as readily as a bar of solid chocolate might be. However, if I were to use a bar of chocolate instead of chocolate chips to make this part of the experiment, then it wouldn't be 100% chocolate chip cookie. It would just be a 100% chocolate cookie, which, well, we're back at the 100% apple pie question again, really, aren't we? Anyway, that's going to go back in the oven now for another 12 minutes, and we'll have another look at it at the end of that time. Second verse, same as the first. This has been in for another 12 minutes now, and yeah, it's starting to toast now. It's also starting to turn crumbly. Now I was thinking that I might have to add a tiny bit of water because chocolate can be made to seize. If you've ever had a Cadbury's flake, that's the texture of chocolate when it seizes. If it's heated, chocolate will tend to do that, and if it's heated and then you add a tiny bit of water, it goes sort of fluffy and crumbly and grainy. So yeah, I reckon another couple of minutes and we're almost there. Yeah, very crumbly, but that's what I actually want. But caramelizing white chocolate is what used to be sold as a chocolate bar called Caramac. I don't think it's made anymore. But you can make your own Caramac by doing this with regular chocolate. As I say, this is got more solids in it, I think, this chocolate, because it's chocolate chips designed for baking. But this is working. This is doing what I want. Anyway, another 10 minutes and I think we'll be ready. Third time is the charm. Now what we've got here is crumbly, caramelized white chocolate. And I think we're ready to make this into some cookies. So, I'll clear a bit of space. Pack it into there, keeping it as crumbly as I can, keeping it as crumb-like as I can. So I think a little bit more. So yeah, pack it down first, make it nice and cohesive, and then around the edge like that. Some dark and milk chocolate chips, and then I'll just press those in. Okay, they have melted a bit, but that's fine. And then we just got enough here to do another one, I think. Now, perhaps you might be thinking it needs a few chips inside of it, so let's do that. Okay, and then again, pack it down solid. I'm just going to go around the outside like that to shape it. Okay, let's be a little bit more careful about the placement this time. Just press those in. Alright, in theory, those are chocolate chip cookies made with 100% chocolate. That's what the chocolate's like. This is cool enough to taste now. And yeah, you can see it's just gone completely crumbly. So that is 100% chocolate chips, and that is a chocolate chip cookie, I think. Just got to wait for that to cool down now before we can really properly assess it. But even at this point, there is a certain biscuity nature to this, just because of the way it's toasted. Right, half an hour or something. I might even put them in the fridge. Okay, we are back. Jenny's with me again with the 100% chocolate chip cookie. So Jenny, before we start, actually, if I just told you that's a cookie, I mean, you know what I've been doing today, but if I told you that's a cookie, would you believe me?
Yeah, probably. By just looking at it.
It does just look like a cookie, doesn't it? I think when you look a little bit closer, there's something amiss here because the bottom is too smooth, but I think we've nailed the look. The question is, what does it taste like? I think the illusion is going to be slightly shattered when I try to cut this because it's not going to cut like a cookie. No, I don't know though. So there's a bit with chocolate chips. Let's go for that. You can have as much as you like, obviously, but okay, well, yeah, here goes.
Very sweet.
Yeah, it is very sweet. I mean, white chocolate is like that. The texture's not quite white chocolate. It's a little bit more grainy than white chocolate, isn't it? Are we getting any flavours of caramel, of toasty cookie? So it's
caramel type.
So, I mean, I don't know that we could have got any closer of trying to make a cookie from 100% chocolate chips, because ultimately it's going to be made of chocolate. Have another piece if you wish. That thin bit, I got a real cookie flavour from the little crumbly bits on the edge.
It's quite nice, but you wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't want to sit and eat one of those instead of a cookie.
No.
It's very rich and sugary and sweet.
Yeah.
But as an experiment, and that's all we were trying to do here, to maximise the percentage of chocolate chips in a chocolate chip cookie, I'm going to call it a success. I think that worked okay. I don't intend to ever make this again, and I can't say I recommend making this, but there we go. It was an interesting experiment.
You couldn't dunk them in a cup of tea, could you?
No, you couldn't. You could maybe dunk them in hot chocolate, and then it wouldn't matter if bits fell off, because you could just stir them in. But yeah, it's not a thing. This is I have not invented a thing here.
Yeah.
This is an experiment that's had some degree of success.
Right, I'll finish that bit off.
Oh, it can't be that bad then.
No.
So there we go. That is my 100% chocolate chip cookie. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.